Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the College Theological Society, good evening. There are two debates which are taking place here tonight. The first debate is one of bodily and religious autonomy of the child, and the second one is of the cultural context of this ban, and which has been warmly brought up by John. I want to deal with the first of these two debates first, and then I will have a more in-depth conversation about the former one on autonomy. I do think there is a general debate to be had about the narrative in which a ban on circumcision would take place. Now, I'm willing to accept that there was a certain time at which banning circumcision would have been completely unfeasible, particularly after World War II in Germany, where there very much was a narrative of oppression of people who were Jewish. I'm willing to accept that it may be somewhat problematic to have even then. I'm willing also to accept that perhaps even today, Germany is a somewhat unfortunate choice of country to start with for a ban on circumcision. However, the point I want to make is the narrative over the way we view religious freedom is constantly changing. It is changing from one of historical and political oppression to one of secularization and freedom and autonomy of the child. We must note that the way in which these executive decisions are received in the country is entirely dependent upon the social and cultural perceptions that exist around them. In particular, in many countries in Europe, the old horrors of cultural repression and religious intolerance are becoming more and more so a distant memory. They're becoming more and more disconnected from the contemporary narrative. I would draw your attention to the Catholic Church, even here in Ireland. To remove the ban on homosexuality back in the 1970s would have been a particularly difficult decision to undertake because of the entrenched religiosity in Irish society. By the time the 1990s came around, the narrative had changed very dramatically from one in which gays were repressed and opposed by religious groups to one in which this opposition was becoming more so a thing of a conservative past and something our present that we needed to change, particularly in the context of a more secularized and liberalized nation. When John says that this is going to feed into minority groups, fascism and repression of Jewish people, I would point out that the way in which this ban is perceived is dramatically changed by the fact that it applies to all religious groups, not just Jews. If it were the targeting of Jews, then it would very much be easy to look at it and claim that Jewish people are being targeted, that their individual faith is being repressed. But no, there are 120,000 Jews in Germany. There are over 4 million Muslims in Germany. And we find the outrage is coming from all of these cultural groups. And that transforms the way in which the dialogue is shaped, because it is not specifically focused upon one religious group which has been historically oppressed. It is focused on all religious groups, not all of which have a context of oppression today, never mind particularly so much in the past. And what this leads to is that very much the discussion does become about secularism. Maybe it has not been so much about secularism in Germany specifically, but in other countries, I very much believe that if circumcision had been proposed here in Ireland, that it would be a discourse about secularism and one about addressing our religious practices that have been allowed in the past and which we may not allow in the present. So, having dealt with that, I want to move back to the debate about autonomy now. I acknowledge that many of you have had your minds made up on this motion before you've heard it. I think it's understandable part of human nature that we have our own opinions on things and that we have thought about them in detail. So I'm not looking to launch an attack upon religion. Instead, what I want to do is raise people's consciousness. Not just consciousness about bodily autonomy, but also the consciousness about religious ownership. Because I think what happens when people become used to something being a norm, they become very reluctant to question it, and so they come obsessed with the idea that simply because it is, means that it ought to be, and it should continue to be. If we look over at the moment at the outrage among the Muslim and Jewish councils in Germany, we will see that a major point of contention with them is that it is infringement upon religious freedom. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, How did we ever know that religious freedom was something that had an absolute value, something that was under protection? And how do we know that circumcision was ever truly justified in the first place? This is the kind of dialogue that we need to move on to, and that is in the sense. Oh dear me. Okay, I'll try and get through this very, very quickly. We've already discussed the effects of circumcision on a child. It is a lie to say that it has no effects on a child. It has effects on an adult's future sexual pleasure, and that is one of the reasons why in certain circumstances over in America, adults have actually wanted to get their foreskins restored. I think this should be an alarm call that some people are not okay with it. I understand that not everybody is going to object to being circumcised. Some people just quite frankly don't care, but it doesn't mean that we should neglect the unheard wishes of somebody who quite simply has never had a chance to consent to that before. There is a broader point of bodily integrity to be had here, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot consider religion as an overriding good, because bodily integrity itself can similarly be held as an overriding good. One of them clearly must come above the other. It is the welfare of the child that we are talking about here, ladies and gentlemen. And when children are not able to make the decision themselves, we ought to err on the side of caution. John said that children don't make decisions for themselves and parents make decisions on their behalf. That's fine, but this is only conscionable so long as we're able to trust parents with the responsibility to do what is right for their children. If this involves hacking off the foreskin of their genitalia without that child even knowing what kind of religion they're opting into, never mind what religion even is, then I think this is a truly unconscionable decision. I do not want to attack religious people who do it. I do not believe that religious people who do circumcision are bad people. I think they're simply people who do it because they never really question precisely why circumcision takes place, and as such, such dialogue has never really got into a place where people ask whether or not it's really okay to do it. So at the end of this, what we really need to consider is the overall context of circumcision in a child's life, and we have to ask ourselves, is any of us be okay with children being circumcised? Are we really aware of what precisely is involved in that circumcision, and are we really aware of the issues of their autonomy that are involved? Thank you.